Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to episode 156 of the Last Round Podcast, coming off pretty much an entire weekend of fight. And when I mean entire weekend, I'm talking about Friday, Saturday, Sunday, well, especially Saturday and Sunday. Interesting, an unusual Sunday card, which was actually a pay-per-view card. And it wasn't one of those YouTube fights on a Sunday that's actually been, I think Mayweather Paul was on a Sunday. This was an actual fight on a pay-per-view, Showtime pay-per-view with Gervonta Davis and Isaac Cruz, which we'll touch on obviously a little later in the show. But jumping right into it, this past Saturday, the 4th of December, from the Copper Box Arena in London on BT Sport, Anthony Yarde gets the 4th round KO over Lyndon Arthur in their rematch. And did he retain it or did he gain these titles, the Commonwealth and WBO Intercontinental Light Heavyweight titles? Who had these titles?
Yarde had them.
So he retained them. He already had them, right?
No, sorry. Arthur had them. Sorry.
Arthur had them. Okay. So Yarde took him away from Lyndon Arthur. As I mentioned, this was a rematch. Were you surprised that Yarde knocked him out?
I was surprised on the performance of Lyndon Arthur. He just looked completely different. I don't know whether there was an injury going into the fight, whether Yarde just starting a lot faster than the original fight, just kind of put him off, and he never got a chance to slow him down, because in the first fight, Yarde was doing that kind of usual kind of like he'd throw a few things and take a step back and kind of admire his work. And it seemed that pace of fight really suited Lyndon Arthur because he could just use his jab. Whereas this fight, Yarde came in completely different mentality, kind of just like walked him down, was walking through some of Arthur's jabs, and it was a lot more clinical performance from him. I thought the stoppage was maybe a little bit early. I mean, Yarde was winning, but Arthur did beat the count, got up, looked okay. But I'm not the referee. I'm not looking into his eyes, so I don't see what he sees. And the referee kind of waved it off. Maybe he was right because Lyndon Arthur didn't. There was no protest from him. But
what was your initial reaction? Did you think it was an early stoppage?
Yeah, my initial reaction was kind of like, okay, like he beat the count, he got up. But when they don't protest at times, you think to yourself like, okay, maybe the referee was right, because it's a big fight. So you'd have thought like if Lyndon Arthur thought, I wanted to continue, then he'd make a scene. He'd be like, no, I want to continue, I want to carry on. But Lyndon Arthur didn't really. He just kind of walked back to his corner, and in his corner didn't even really, protest too much. So maybe the referee was obviously right on that day. Good win for Anthony Yarde though. I didn't see it. I thought Lyndon Arthur was just gonna outbox him, outjab him again. And obviously this is going to be a big fight for the future. The commentary team was saying that, looks like Frank Warren's going to try and set up Yarde for the winner of Joe Smith Jr. and Callum Johnson, who fight on January the 15th for the WBO title. So another big fight for Anthony Yarde.
Well, now that you mentioned that, what do you think? How do you think a matchup would go between Anthony Yarde and either Callum Johnson or Joe Smith?
I think he'd lose either.
Oh, really? Like a knockout or like a decision? What are we talking about?
I think he'd lose to both of them. Whoever wins out of Joe Smith Jr. and Callum Johnson. I don't see that fight going 12 rounds, and I don't see whoever wins that fight against Anthony Yarde going 12 rounds, because they're all, kind of walk you down, knock you out type of fighters, all, heavy-handed. I think it'd be a great fight for the fans, but I think, Joe Smith Jr. beats Anthony Yarde, and I also think Callum Johnson beats Anthony Yarde.
Oh, wow. You sound fairly confident when you're saying that. So
I'm not the biggest fan of Anthony Yarde. I was kind of actually surprised he won this fight. Lyndon Arthur looked terrible, and I don't know whether there was something wrong going into the fight or whether it was just Anthony Yarde's, changing tactics, which kind of threw Yarde off. Which threw Arthur off. because at times he looked completely lost. He was kind of just taking things, going back to the ropes, getting caught on the ropes, not throwing much back. Just everything about him, his mannerisms, his face, he just looked completely different. I don't know whether it's just, Yarde was just beating him down. He didn't know what to do. He looked kind of lost, or, was he injured going into the fight? You've never heard anything since the fight. So maybe it was just Yarde's performance, which made him look so bad. Maybe I need to give him more props.
When was the first matchup?
Wasn't it towards the end of 2019?
Was it 19? I thought it was. I asked because I thought it was during the pandemic, but was it before?
It was around a year ago, like 13 months ago or something like that. I think they were saying it's around a year ago.
So it was in 2020, right? Not 2019.
Let me look.
Because I was trying to think. I was like, did they fight before the pandemic officially started, or
no? It was during the pandemic. They fought.
It was during the pandemic, right?
December 5th, 2020.
Okay, yeah, that's what I assumed. Okay, and I mean, so you think that Anthony Yarde made a statement by knocking him out pretty much early in the fight in the fourth round. So no, because sometimes in the sport of boxing we see, when you fight twice, depending, sometimes they want to make a trilogy, and they kind of want to go for 3 fights. So you see no reason to see a trilogy out of these 2 fighters.
No one's mentioned it.
Well, right, but I mean, like, what do you think?
I mean, personally, yeah. I mean, if you were in the first fight, Lyndon Arthur won it quite convincingly behind a jab. This fight, Anthony Yarde went in there and knocked him out. It's 1-1, 2 completely different performances from each fighter. Why not do a third?
Well, that's what I'm asking. Like, I feel like they are going to do a third fight because I
think they might do further down the line, but it looks like Frank Warren is, completely in Anthony Yarde's camp, because if you were Lyndon Arthur and you won the first fight, why not go on to bigger and better things? There was never really any talk of that. The whole time it looked like they were, trying to force the rematch for Anthony Yarde because he's the bigger name. He's the more marketable character. He's the guy that's sponsored by Adidas. It looks like they were trying to put them back in together. So, hopefully Yarde would get the win so they can move him on because he's just a bigger star. I assume, Frank Warren earns more money from Yarde, and he probably wasn't too happy that he, picked up the L that day.
Right.
I mean, he was right. He turned around and, he convincingly beat him over 4 rounds.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I wonder, have we heard anything about the contracts? Any rematch clauses? Is there a trilogy? Anything? Has there been any reports about that?
No. The only thing that, on the day, they just kept saying, like the winner of this fight will face the winner of Joe Smith Jr. and Callum Johnson. So I don't think there was any rematch clauses or anything like that. They kind of just pushed Lyndon Arthur into this rematch. And no one's really spoken about, what's going to happen to him after, winning the first fight. He was spoken about, how good he is, how good his jab is. And, that's all disappeared now. And all the talks about Anthony Yarde coming back and how good his performance was.
Right. Well, I think you're right that the winner, obviously Anthony Yarde, they're going to sit back and wait what happens between Joe Smith and Callum Johnson and then try to make that fight sometime next year. But I think that Lyndon Arthur is eventually going to get his third fight. They're going to have to fight again, just because they both split the first 2 fights. Because I don't think this is essentially I don't think this is essentially a Canelo Triple G situation where they've had 2 fights and the first one was a draw. So that's a little different than this one. But a lot of people felt Triple G should have took the victory in that one. And the second one, Canelo got the decision and essentially felt that chapter was over. He's like, why do I need to fight him again? What's the reason for that? Do you think maybe Frank Warren and Anthony Yarde kind of feel the same way in regards to Lyndon Arthur?
I mean, I agree. I think they'll do the rematch, but I think it's one of those things where I think, Yarde will try to go on to bigger and better things, and that rematch will always be there. later down the line. And they can always revisit that, because I think people will always know that that'll be a big, fight, a big trilogy on British soil. Kind of like, I suppose, the Amir Khan and Kell Brook, that's kind of still popular, even though it's like 5 or 6 years too late.
Right. No, yeah, I could see it. I think they will eventually fight a third time, especially because they've split the first 2 matchups. So, I don't want to say I'm 100% sure, but I'm going to say 99% sure they will fight a third time eventually. It's like you said, Amir Khan, Kell Brook. How many years have we heard their names being mentioned together? And now they're finally scheduled to fight, at least in February, I believe. So, yeah, I believe sooner or later these 2 guys, Yarde and Arthur, will face off again in a rubber match, and let's see who really seals the deal in when that trilogy ends up unfolding. Moving on that card, I hope I'm going to say this right. Hamza Shiraz gets the 9th round TKO over Bradley Skeet. And this was for the WBO European Super Welterweight title. What'd you think about this matchup?
I mean, obviously the biggest controversy of the weekend, wasn't it? Bradley Skeet was knocked down, was like on one knee. Hamza Shiraz comes in and, hits him like 2 or 3 times whilst he's down. Bradley Skeet kind of goes down. I think Adam Catterall from the Fight Disciples said, I think he was there working the fight, and he said that he could see him and it looked like Skeet was actually out. He actually, from those 2 or 3 blows, he looked like he was out. Comes back round, obviously his corner are telling him, take your time. The referee kind of like drags him to his feet pretty much, and then kind of tells him like, hey, are you good to fight? Let's carry on. Kind of like forces him into, really carrying on the fight. Going by the book, disqualification, I think, especially when he's actually injured him. It's not like he hit him, gently around the face. He hit him 2 or 3 times and sent him back to the canvas. I think the right thing would have been, just to, follow it by the book, be very black and white, disqualification, and then, they come and fight again. Bradley Skeet's just come back from, a couple of years off. He's obviously not getting any younger. This is a big win for him. If he'd have got the disqualification, he comes out obviously the victor. They fight again. Obviously, his purse is probably bigger. It's another win on his resume. And the bad thing was Hamza Shiraz was losing. So I think that might have been the fact that he was so uptight. He was kind of nervous. He kind of knocks Bradley Skeet down. He kind of goes to the knee instead of going to the canvas. He just got overexcited and hit him 2 or 3 more times because he was getting outschooled, to be honest with you. Bradley Skeet. I was always a fan of Bradley Skeet. I thought he was a good fighter. And then he obviously went over to fight that Kerman Laraja when he hit the scenes. And he knocked him out over in Spain. And then, Bradley Skeet kind of just disappeared off the face of the boxing world for a couple of years. But Hamza Shiraz, to his credit, did come out, posted something on social media.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. What did it say?
Just sort of saying that, I'm sorry for what happened. I didn't, mean to do it. I got caught up in the moment. I want to do the right thing and let's run it back. I know obviously the British Board of Boxing will go in to look at it Wednesday. And I imagine they're probably going to do the same thing. I imagine they're probably going to say, what, Hamza Shiraz has already offered that olive branch. Let's do it. Let's run it back. Let's, set the record straight, and let's do it for a second time and, get an eventual victor.
I mean, you mentioned that he should have been disqualified. Do you think, what if the referee would have taken away 1, maybe 2 points?
He did take away 1 point on the day, but
no, but for that specific incident, though.
Yeah, well, he did for that incident. He did.
Oh, there was a point taken away.
Yeah, he did take away 1 point. Yeah, he kind of gave Bradley Skeet a little bit of time and then grabbed a hold of Shiraz, took away 1 point. But it's kind of, if you're acknowledging that he's hit him multiple times on the ground, then I think really the only thing you can go for is a disqualification. You can't then say oh, well, let's just take 1 point. I think once you've acknowledged it, I think you really need to follow the rule book and say that's it. Sorry, the fight's over.
Right.
You can always run it back. I know Shiraz was technically supposed to be the A side, but he was getting schooled, and the referee must have seen that. And I know it's a hard job. I know it's a it's a thankless task. I imagine being a referee and you're in there, it's a big fight, the A side's losing, and you kind of think to yourself, like, oh man, like, do I really want to end the fight on this? But that's what he's paid to do at the end of the day. That's why he's in there, for the guy's safety, and to be the guy that has to do the hard things. And that's, that's why he's there. I think he's an A-class referee. So he's, the highest referee you can be in the UK.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you're right. I think if the British Board of Boxing Control is going to take a look at it this week, I think Shiraz's statement that he put out on Twitter, I believe, I'm sure they're going to take that into account, and they're going to, that might influence their decision, and they might just order the fight again and just say, hey, they're both open to it. He already extended an olive branch, like you said. Just fight again. And this time don't, try not to do dirty tactics, I guess, if you want to label it like that. So
his performance was poor, though. Just looking at away from obviously that, the amount of push behind Shiraz. Everyone was talking about how good he is, how he's come over to the US. He's obviously trained by Ricky Funes out of the Ted Goosen gym. He looked limited. Just the fact that, Bradley Skeet's kind of skillful fighter, you could just see round after round after round, Bradley Skeet was just growing in confidence, started to showboat a little bit. He was doing that kind of, little fancy footwork in front of him. And he had his number. He looked lost. He really did look lost. And then, Shiraz, Ricky Funes just kept telling him, like, just walk him down. You're like, dude, you've been saying that for every single round, and he's not been able to do it. But he just kept saying the same thing. And, he did start to get to him a couple of times, because I think there was a legitimate knockdown. And then obviously this happened. But yeah, Shiraz's performance wasn't great.
It's like you mentioned Ricky Funes telling him in the corner, just walk him down. It's like shades of Teofimo Lopez Sr. telling Teofimo Lopez in their fight.
But Funes is experienced, though.
No, you're right. Yeah. Maybe it was accurate. He probably saw it. Like, you can walk this guy down. So that's why he kept telling him to walk him down.
I guess in hindsight, he wasn't going to outbox him. So the only thing he could do was walk him down. So, he did kind of get to him in the end, because obviously he did knock him down. He just didn't need to knock him down whilst he was also on his knees. So yeah, he did get to him, I guess, eventually, but his performance wasn't great.
Moving on. From the MGM Grand Garden Arena, also this past Saturday in Las Vegas on DAZN, Devin Haney retains his WBC lightweight world title and improves to 27-0 with a 12-round unanimous decision win over Joseph Jojo Diaz Jr. Hey, man, I picked Diaz last week. I told you I kept switching back and forth. And I think as when we recorded our episode last week, I said Diaz by decision, possibly split. Devin Haney ended up taking the unanimous decision in this fight. I thought it was a good fight still. They both have really great boxing skill. Diaz, I was really proud of Diaz's body work. He's always had great body work, and it seems like it gets better every time, even if he's on the losing end. But it got to a point when I realized that speed is what really kills Joseph Diaz. I had watching that fight, especially in the later rounds, when it was pretty much, when you can pretty much say that Devin Haney was going to take it, when you can pretty much understand that he was going to take the decision win. I was thinking about when Joseph Diaz Jr. fought Gary Russell Jr. in his first world title shot. I mean, Gary Russell Jr. obviously is a fast fighter. Devin Haney proved on Saturday night that he's fast, or that he's faster than Joseph Diaz. And I think that's Diaz's kryptonite. I think if the other person can box and they have speed, that's how you beat Joseph Diaz Jr. But Diaz still finds shots and openings to find perfectly timed shots. That's not saying that he doesn't. He finds some great openings, especially to the body, as I said. But Haney has good boxing skills, and neither of them have power. I think, and you tell me if you agree with this or not, but I think if Joseph Diaz Jr. had power, Devin Haney probably at least would have went down once, because I just don't, because he would, like I said, Joseph Diaz was getting some good shots in. He found some openings. He just didn't find enough openings to win the rounds. And Devin Haney used his speed. He punched and got out of the pocket. Diaz, obviously, he likes to fight on the inside, and he tried to keep the fight on the inside, but Devin Haney obviously knew that and would get his shots in and back out. And even Haney was doing some body shots, which I gave him a lot of credit for. But yeah, I think speed is Joseph Diaz Jr.'s kryptonite in the sport of boxing. What do you think?
No, yeah, I would agree with that. When you, like you said, if you look at the Gary Russell fight and then also this one, I think, yeah, he just lacks a little bit of being able to deal with, people that are kind of quick. But like you said, I think Diaz, he just keeps growing on me. I love the fact that he just gets in there and fights anybody now. It's unbelievable. And I think he's winning himself more and more fans by doing that. And also his reaction to when he lost. He listened to it and he's like, yeah, okay, I agree with that. I thought I did a little bit better than that on the scorecards, but I'll accept it. And I was just like, dude, this guy, he's just going away with his problems and come back to such a mature, open-minded adult now. Unbelievable. Honestly, he's growing in probably one of my favorite fighters now, just in terms of, his personality-wise, the fact that he'll get in there like old school and fight anybody. Because straight after this, he's like, you know what? Give me Ryan Garcia next.
Yeah, on Twitter,
social media.
Right.
I was like, fucking hell, dude, that's unbelievable. Like, if he actually does that, because that fight was already kind of arranged, so why not make it?
I could see that still happening. They're both Golden Boy.
Yeah, why not make it? It's a good payday for him. Like, Golden Boy kind of owe him. Diaz stepped in to fight Fortuna. Diaz stepped in to fight Devin Haney. Why not give him another payday? We've had, Robert Diaz on here several times, and he sings the praises of, Jojo Diaz and, what he does for Golden Boy, how he'll step in the last minute and he'll move up weight categories and stuff like that. He's literally like, Broner says, he's the can man, but Diaz actually does it. He will fight anybody. But I think his problem is, and I think we spoke about this before, is Diaz, like, if he was a computer game, he's like sixes across the board, 6s or 7s across the board and everything. And he doesn't have like outstanding speed, doesn't have outstanding power. He's just, really competent at everything in the boxing world, but he doesn't have that one outstanding thing which helps him win fights. Which sounds kind of strange to say because he's only lost twice and he's lost to 2 world champions. But he just lacks that one outstanding thing to help him get over those hurdles of when he fights like somebody that's really, really good, like a Russell or a Haney, or if he fought like a Teofimo Lopez, because he's got the power and other guys in and around him in that division. But still, yeah, great account of himself. I thought the fight was actually a little bit closer than the 117, 111 scorecards. I thought that was a little bit harsh on Jojo, but he was fighting Devin pretty much in his own backyard.
Actually, Diaz had a lot of fans there.
Yeah,
I would argue that Diaz probably had more fans there.
Yeah, in terms of pop, yeah, I think you're right. I think, like I said before, he's growing on people because of the way that he is. Where I think Devin at times is his own worst enemy because people are paying to go and see him fight, and then after the fights, he posts videos of him buying like hundreds of thousands of dollars, diamond encrusted watches, and you're like, dude, you're trying to be Floyd, but you're not Floyd.
Well, yeah, it's the Floyd Mayweather lifestyle. Like, there's a lot of fighters. Look at it's a perfect example. Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez talking about Floyd Mayweather all the time, and they emulate him. That's who they grew up watching, and they're young guys. They're in their early 20s, so they see he was like the best boxer and the most successful boxer financially in the world. So they're just like, well, I want to be like that guy. So
come up with your own gimmick, though. Floyd's, it's a gimmick, right? People know that. He decided to do that. Like, Top Rank didn't agree with that. He bought himself out of Top Rank's contract, and he was correct. He knew that gimmick was going to work. Being like the villain, some people will love it, some people will hate it, but both people will come to pay to see you either get knocked out or knock people out. And it worked for him. Don't try to be somebody else. Like, it's people who tried to be Conor McGregor. They get the same tattoos, they try and pull the same gimmick, they try to be funny like he is. Devin, just be Devin. Like, be a nice guy, which you seem to be in the interviews. Or if you're trying to be this, money man, then try to be the villain. You can't do both. He's kind of stuck between it, because when you hear him in interviews, he's comes across, quite eloquent, like a nice guy. But then when he posts all this stuff, it's just like, I don't want to see like you and all the money that you have. Like, why would we want to see that? Some of these boxing fans have probably worked hours upon hours upon hours to afford to fly out to Vegas to come and see him. And then he's posting, like $250,000 watches that he's got with like stacks of money on the table, and it's like, it puts you off him. Honestly, it puts you off him. But we've kind of spoken about Jojo more than we spoke about Haney. But I thought it was a good fight. I thought Haney, same thing. After a few rounds, you could tell he was going to win, and he never stepped it up. I don't know whether he's too scared to try to do that now to impress the fans after he got caught when he fought Linares. But his fights are forgettable, unfortunately. We're not going to sit there in months to come and be like, oh, you remember that fight he had against Jojo Diaz? Like, man, that was amazing. They're very forgettable, because he just goes through the gears and then kind of just sees fights out.
Yeah, I mean, it's because there's no pop in his punches, and it's necessarily his fault. No, because he's obviously got great skill. He could fight. I would say Jojo up until this point, even though he was rocked by Linares at the end of that 10th round in their fight, it was like in the final 5 seconds. I would say that Jojo has likely been his toughest fight so far. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think we touched on this last week before the fight, that we thought that Jojo is going to be his hardest fight because Jojo's kind of still in his prime. Whereas when he fought like Gamboa and when he fought Linares, they're on the other side of the hill. They're coming down, and they were kind of picked as, guys of name who were gatekeepers. They're not journeymen. They're all, ex-world champions. They're more gatekeepers coming down the hill looking for those final few paydays. No,
right. You're right.
In terms of the four princes, the four kings, since Teofimo Lopez lost, has that changed in your opinion on who you think is the better of the four?
Well, we're going to touch on the fight later, but I think somebody like Isaac Cruz made a statement this past weekend on Sunday too, and we'll touch on that performance and that fight in a bit. But that whole four prince thing, I think a month ago you could still say it, but a month later, when we've had a couple of these lightweights fight, these four princes, what people are calling them, I think that whole division is up for grabs right now. You got Kambosos, who knocked off Teofimo, and now he's essentially got all the belts. Essentially, he should fight Devin Haney, which it seems like they might. Devin Haney has already said that after this win against Jojo Diaz, he's already said that he's willing to go to Australia. And Kambosos obviously wants to fight in Australia in front of his countrymen. And Devin Haney has the last remaining title, in a sense, that Kambosos needs to leave no doubt about the undisputed title. So why not? Why not see that fight? But yeah, going back to the whole four princes thing, yeah, that's no longer relevant. That whole division is up for grabs. And depending on how he performs this weekend, we're going to touch on that fight too. I think Lomachenko still comes out on top above everybody. I really do. Depending on how he looks this weekend, which I'm assuming he's still going to be the same Lomachenko, I still think Lomachenko is the number one guy in that whole division. I still do. But we'll see. We'll see how it all comes out. Devin Haney, I agreed with the decision. I'm just like you. I didn't agree with the 117-111 scorecards. The two judges had it that score, and then one had it 116-112. I agree with the 116-112. I think that was a good score. It's not necessarily to say 117-111 was horrible, but I didn't see it that way. But it's passable. But like I said, it was a good fight in terms of like watching boxing. If you want to show somebody a fight, like, okay, from a boxing perspective, I think that's a good fight to show people, at least from like recent memory. Both fighters are good. They place their punches well. Devin Haney has the speed. Jojo Diaz obviously didn't have the speed to match Haney, but he has some of the, decent timing, and he has good placement of his punches. And his body work is excellent. None of them just have that power in their shots. I think up until this point, I think Jojo Diaz has shown that he has a better chin than Devin Haney, just because Devin obviously was rocked by Jorge Linares. But, I think that's just the thing between both of them. They just need some power. But I think Jojo Diaz, I wouldn't categorize Jojo Diaz as a journeyman. Not yet. I still think he's a level above that. And he's still going to be able to get some decent fights in his career. I mean, I think he's 26, 27 years old. He's still got a ton of years left. Devin Haney's 23, 22, 23. So they're young guys. They're young guys with a lot of career ahead of them. So we'll see how they go from there. And like you said, Diaz calls out Ryan Garcia, which I can still see that happening next year. I can still see Golden Boy putting them together.
Perfect for Ryan because Jojo doesn't have pop.
Yeah, but Jojo is a good boxer. So, what happens then? I think that's also a very intriguing fight. I'm still interested to see that fight, even though Jojo Diaz lost this fight, because like you said, he has that throwback attitude of a fighter. Ryan pulls out of the Javier Fortuna fight. Jojo Diaz said, I'll take the spot. He beats Fortuna. Then he's supposed to fight Ryan. Ryan pulls out again. And then Haney's like, well, why don't you fight me? I got a title. Jojo Diaz is just, okay, let's make a deal. They make a deal and they fight, And Jojo Diaz, would you agree that Gary Russell Jr., that fight was a lot more one-sided in favor of Russell Jr. instead of this one with Haney this past weekend? Yeah.
I mean, Jojo did well against Russell, but he just kind of wore him down, and towards the end, you could see where it was going. Whereas, this was a lot closer than the scorecard said.
Right. And I know that fight was at, I believe, 126, so 9 pounds below 135. But, I mean, we're just comparing different fights in his career just because Haney and Gary Russell Jr. are both fast fighters. But yeah, I think it was still an excellent fight. I was entertained. Some people were criticizing Jojo Diaz that he should have stepped on the gas a little bit more, especially in the last couple rounds. But, Haney did well. He knew that Jojo Diaz was going to try to make a fight on the inside, and Haney tried, his hardest not to let that happen. There was a couple of times where they actually exchanged pretty well with each other, and I was like, oh, okay, this is really getting good. But Haney, I think, did a really good job in not keeping that fight on the inside, because I think he knew, okay, if I get on the inside, he likes to fight on the inside, so that's not where I want to be. And it ended up being a good game plan for him. So, we'll see. But I think they're both coming out of that fight in decent positions. Obviously, Haney in the better position, but Jojo Diaz is still coming out of that fight in an excellent position. Like I said, he's young. He still has a lot of years left ahead of him in the fight game. And there's still a high chance that Golden Boy makes him and Ryan Garcia, like we've been saying. So we'll see. But Haney, if I had to guess, I'm not sure if Kambosos gets a voluntary defense in Australia, on DAZN with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, and then maybe tries to set up the Haney fight, or if Haney and Kambosos fight next in Australia. What do you think?
Good question. I mean, I could see Eddie or whoever saying, you know what, have a home voluntary. You deserve it. Which gives him a fight in Australia for his legion of fans back there. And then kind of telling him hey, because the money fight really is going to be Devin Haney in Las Vegas. So we'll give you a fight at home just to keep him happy. Let's a home little swan song. But then say hey, but we need to do the Devin Haney fight in Vegas or in the US just because that's where the money is.
That's where the money's at, yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Even though Devin Haney and his dad did say they were willing to travel to Australia. I think that's the more logical plan, how somebody like Matchroom and Eddie Hearn and DAZN are going to look at it.
It's 2 paydays for Kambosos as well. He deserves it after.
Yeah. So I think that's how they would sell it to him. Like, look, you'll get paid twice in defending these titles, and if you beat Haney, then you're legitimately undisputed and you keep having paydays and you keep going, So yeah, I could see that. Who knows who he would fight in his home country? But I would assume Devin Haney would be there ringside. I would assume Eddie Hearn would fly him out. I mean, it'd be good for the broadcast. But yeah, so Devin Haney comes out on top, retains his WBC lightweight world title. Kambosos obviously just got the upset, and he's now essentially has all the titles. And they just need to fight to really see who's the man at 135 right now. I mean, as of right now, it is Kambosos because he beat the man who beat the man. He's the top guy. But let's just see what happens. But it seems like Eddie Hearn is really going to try really hard to make that fight happen. Maybe next summer, maybe a little after that. But yeah, I think you're right. I think he's gonna try to make that in Vegas, a Haney Kambosos undisputed unification fight. So we'll see. We will see. And Diaz, I'm sure he's still going to get opportunities, like I mentioned. Moving on. This past Sunday, rare Sunday card. We've been getting a lot of Sunday cards. I don't know if it's these social media stars or YouTubers that have kind of started this trend, but the 5th of December from the Staples Center, which is actually changing names this month to the Crypto.com Arena. So no more Staples Center. So this might be the last week we say Staples Center. So you're going to have to change our notes here for each episode and put Crypto.com Arena. I'm probably still going to call it Staples Center. I'm sure a lot of people are still going to call it Staples Center. It's like the StubHub Center. Now it's technically the Dignity Health Sports Park, but we still call it StubHub. Some people call it the Home Depot Center. So it is what it is. But from the Staples Center in Los Angeles on Showtime pay-per-view, this was a pay-per-view card on a Sunday. Gervonta Tank Davis remains undefeated at 26-0 with a hard-fought and rare unanimous decision win over Isaac Cruz, who takes the second loss of his career. I was also wrong on this one. I was surprised on this one as well. I thought Tank Davis was going to knock him out, especially because Cruz was shorter than Davis. He was smaller than Davis. And Davis is already 5'5", maybe 5'6". Cruz is small. Cruz is like 5'4". So I thought, oh man, no way. Like I just thought Davis was gonna KO him. Boy, was I wrong. I was totally wrong. Cruz took the fight to him to the point where I don't even think he came out a loser in this fight. Some people even had him. I don't agree with it, but some people had him winning 115, 113, or some people had a lot of people. What I've seen had it a draw. I didn't agree with that. I thought Davis edged it out. I thought he edged it out 115, 113. I did agree with that. I think that last round won it for Davis, because if not, it would have been a draw. But I think that last round, I think Davis kind of knew, and supposedly he injured his hand like in the 5th or 6th round. And then in the post fight, I believe Calvin Ford, his trainer, said that it was injured in camp. And people were just, well, what was it? I thought he injured it in the fight. And then they were like, oh no, he injured it in camp. And then he re-injured in the fight. So I don't know. Who knows if that's an excuse or not? Obviously you could see he posted pictures of his hand like swollen. So it was injured. But he had said that it's because Cruz's head was so hard and he was punching down and he kind of hit his forehead. I mean, if he injured his hand in the fight, that just shows you how hard he was trying to knock him out. Like he was throwing it with all his might and all his power. And Cruz, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there was one point where Cruz was even stunned. Was he?
No, I agree. I mean, Cruz, we said that it was going to be a competitive fight, and we thought it was probably going to be a more competitive fight than him fighting Rolly, to be honest with you. And
yeah, I think we agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it definitely was. I thought Davis, probably did edge it, 115, 113. I thought it was a close fight. You could see, definitely in the last couple of rounds that Davis was like, he's not really known for his boxing ability. He's not known for, his boxing and moving. And you can see, I think it was in like round 12, he pretty much just boxed and moved for the whole round. So you could see that, obviously his power hand was, affected and he didn't really want to throw it. Also, there's that thing about him fighting somebody that's smaller than him, smaller target. He's not used to it because there's not many people, who are like, professional boxers who were so small, in and around his weight division. He's normally the smallest and he's always punching a larger target. And then also one of the worst things I thought after the fight was the fact that they never called Kambosos out. He's the guy
he was there too. He was there. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if they showed him on the broadcast because there was a couple of times when I stopped watching or I just wasn't looking at the TV. But I saw on Twitter that they had showed him on the screen in the arena and he got the loudest cheers of the night. Magic Johnson of the Los Angeles Lakers was there. There were some other NBA players, stuff like that. There actually wasn't too many celebrities there there was like NBA players and, but it wasn't, for being in Hollywood, it doesn't seem like there was, I don't think they got what they expected. But Kambosos reportedly got a big pop when he was shown on the screen inside the Staples Center, which is very, very telling. I think a lot of people know, a lot of those boxing fans in that arena knew, hey, that guy, he did it the hard way. He came in and he beat the guy, he beat the man, and now he's the champion. He did his thing. But I don't think people should be surprised that Tank Davis and like Mayweather Promotions and PBC, they don't call out anybody because they know, we're the stars. Why do we have to call out anybody? When Mayweather started becoming the star, he never called out anybody. He never did. The only person who was like kind of there was Pacquiao. And, I guess he would semi-call him out or not really. But the only person that Davis and like Leonard Ellerbe and Mayweather Promotions kind of call out, if you want to kind of categorize it like that, is Ryan Garcia, because they know they can make a lot of money with him, because Davis has his own audience that he brings to the table. And he's already proven that he's a draw and he can bring money to the table. And Ryan Garcia has his own audience, which is a different audience from Tank Davis. And if you combine both of those audiences, and I'm sure how Mayweather and Tank Davis see it, they're like, well, Ryan Garcia is going to bring in this younger crowd, and then Tank Davis is going to hopefully get those fans, and they're going to make a ton of money. And they know Ryan Garcia would get knocked out. Tank Davis would knock out Ryan Garcia. He would. There's no doubt in my mind. I know last week I said, oh, yeah, he's going to knock out Isaac Cruz or Isaac Cruz or whatever. And I was wrong. On this one, I'm fairly certain. I'm more certain than that prediction last week that Tank Davis would knock out Ryan Garcia. It would be a big fight. It would be a big fight financially and maybe do pretty decent ratings on pay-per-view or whatever it is. But Tank Davis would knock out Ryan Garcia. He would. And like we touched about earlier, Jojo Diaz putting out there that he wants to fight Ryan Garcia, but then Ryan Garcia kind of was tweeting during the fight of Tank Davis and then says like, oh, I want to fight Tank Davis. And then Mayweather said in the post-fight that they had made an offer to Ryan Garcia and Ryan Garcia didn't take it because he thought he was going to get a Pacquiao fight. And then I believe Chris Mannix reported that offer that Mayweather had made to Ryan Garcia for Tank Davis was reportedly a 2-fight deal, that they would each fight on the same card against other opponents. And then in the next card, they would main event and fight each other. So I don't know how that works, but I guess that was at that time when Ryan Garcia really thought he was going to get the Pacquiao fight, which I was going to be surprised if he did. I never thought he was going to, but yeah, like kind of going back to the Davis-Cruz fight, I agree with the decision. I think Davis edged it out. And, I commend him for, obviously he's a knockout guy. He's knocked out pretty much all of his opponents. The only 2 opponents The only two opponents who have went the distance with him are Mexican fighters. And Cruz, like I said at the beginning, he's not coming out of this a loser. Even though he was on the losing end, his stock went way up. Because even Davis in the post-fight in the ring with Jim Gray said about Isaac Cruz, tonight a star was born. He said that. He said that about Cruz. And then Jim Gray asked him, like, oh, do you want a rematch? Would you rematch him? And then he said, hell no. So, what does that tell you? He's like, oh, I don't want to fight this guy again. I mean, Cruz did excellent work. His body work, I mean, it's like a Mexican fighter, Julio Cesar Chavez and those guys. His body work was awesome. Excellent. But honestly, Davis got some body shots in there too, which was I was really impressed by that. I mean, I'm a fan of, I think a lot of people are fans of body work, but it doesn't get that much love from the judges in a sense. But Cruz was in there, man. He had his shots and he had his moments. And I wouldn't even say he survived the 12 rounds. Like he went in there. What's his nickname? Like a pit bull. And he went through that whole fight as a pit bull. I mean, would you agree that for a majority of that fight, it was Cruz walking down Davis?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. At times,
the smaller guy was walking down the bigger guy.
Yeah, I think it really shocked Gervonta.
Yeah, I think that's what happened. Because I mean, even Jim Gray had said that in the ring in the post fight, saying, "Hey, like, were you surprised? Like, most people." I think he told Davis, "Well, most people when they fight you, they don't kind of come after you because they know how dangerous you are." And this guy, Cruz, he was coming after you the whole fight. I was very surprised about that. And he took some nasty shots. And I was also very impressed with how he trained, because there was a lot of times where he blocked that signature uppercut that Tank Davis has. And there was a couple slow motion replays where they showed on the broadcast where Tank Davis was cocking back to do that, catch him with that uppercut. And Cruz saw it coming, and he kind of put his guard up to block it, and he blocked it. I thought that was excellent. I thought that was great boxing ability right there. I know there was criticism of the broadcast team, of the commentary team, on how they were showing the replays and kind of talking about the fight. I noticed that too when I was watching it. Whenever Cruz would have a pretty decent round, the replay they would show was about Tank Davis landing, or like they would show a punch, like a shot of his landing on Cruz where he would hit his gloves, or it wouldn't even land flush. So they did strike me as kind of biased when I was watching it. So when I started seeing, like, on boxing Twitter or boxing social media platforms, people criticizing the commentary team, I pretty much agree, because I had that feeling when I was watching it that each of them that commentary team was essentially biased for Tank Davis. But it's not to say that Davis didn't fight well. I think he showed another skill in a fight that he needed to, and it was good for him in the end, because he's so used to knocking guys out. And I think he really tried. He really tried to knock him out, and he just couldn't. He really couldn't. So I think especially that's why he hurt his hand. And when he hurt his hand, I think he knew, okay, I need to box him, man. I need to stay away from him, get in and out and try to score some points. So he figured it out. He had an injury and he fought through it. I think he went to the corner at one point, and Calvin Ford told him, he was complaining about his hand, and Calvin Ford had told him, I don't care about that. Fight through it. Something along those lines. Like pretty much saying, like, I don't care about the pain. Fight through that pain and let's win this fight. And he did. He did. Because, I mean, that hurt. When you injure your hand in boxing and you still have, 5-6 rounds to go, you're like, oh, man, this sucks. It hurts. And he figured it out. So I commend him for that. I think Davis, a lot of people say, oh, he didn't knock him out. He doesn't deserve credit. It was technically a loss. I don't think so. I think it's good for him that he went 12 rounds with somebody that he probably thought he was going to knock out. It kind of humbles him in a way. I still think he's very dangerous at 135. I still think that they're probably going to try to make a fight with Ryan Garcia. I mean, who else? do you think it's really realistic that they're going to really try to give Rolly Romero, if those allegations, no charges are filed as a result of those allegations against Rolly Romero, do you really think that Mayweather Promotions and Floyd Mayweather are really going to try to make that fight again?
It depend on the outcome on it, whether they, Rolly managed to sweep it under the carpet, or, whether he comes out, not guilty. If the charges get dropped or he comes out not guilty, he's found not guilty, then.
Well, as of right now, there's no charges, right? I haven't heard anything about any charges filed.
I think if it goes down that route, then I think, they would, because we know that they like to keep things in-house. I think the problem we have is I think Ryan Garcia likes to, tease and, build off Gervonta Davis's name. But in all honesty, I don't see him ever fighting him. I'm sure Golden Boy, know that Ryan Garcia has a suspect chin, and they'll pick people like, your Jojo Diaz and people who, aren't big punches that, have the chance of, wiping him out. He'd be very, very carefully selected due to his legion of fans and the amount of money that he can, potentially bring into Golden Boy.
Right. No, you're right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I still think Davis is a big threat. But tell me if you agree. I'm sure you do, but I think Cruz came out the biggest winner in that fight, because he came in essentially a nobody nobody really knew who he was. And people thought, oh, Davis is going to take it. Davis is going to take it. And he did a great performance. He did a great performance where he kept the scorecards close, 115-113 against somebody like Tank Davis. And then even Mayweather said in the post-fight press conference, I think he had talked about the scorecards being close, 115-113 essentially. And he had said, well, fighting in California is like fighting in Mexico. When you fight in Texas and California, it's like fighting in Mexico, pretty much saying, yeah. And then you fight against a Mexican fighter like Cruz, they're going to give them the benefit of the doubt and give them more rounds. I mean, it is what it is. Obviously, there's certain areas that people go to fight because they know, okay, we're probably going to get a better break in this area for the judges if it goes to the scorecards. But think about it like this. What if somebody said that about another area, not including Mexicans or whatever, and said like, oh, if you fight in Atlanta, or if you fight in, in whatever, Providence or whatever, anywhere Ohio. Like that. Yeah. About some other culture, some other races, what would happen then? I mean, like, I'm not disagreeing. Like, I understand what he's saying, especially us being in this boxing world and us seeing it over the last several years, or how many years we've been covering and watching this sport. Of course, we understand what he's saying, but the uproar that would come about if that was said by somebody else in another place. Think about it.
The fans don't score, though. The fans don't score the fight. Normally, like a 115, 113 or something like that to the A-side fighter means they've lost, normally, because the fight was that close that they've given it to them anyway. But it normally, like, it's like when you see like a draw or something like that, you're like, oh, the A-side probably lost, but the judges were kind of too scared to give it to the other fighter, so we've ended up with a draw. I don't really agree with that because, Gervonta Davis was the A-side and Isaac Cruz was not even the B-side. He was a last-minute stand-in. So the judges,
And he had 5 weeks to prepare. He was already, I think, reportedly on the card to fight. Card, so he was already training. So some people think, oh, he was a last-minute replacement and he almost beat him. I was like, well, he was a replacement, but I wouldn't label it as last minute in a sense, because he was going to be on the card and he was already training and he had 5 weeks to train. It wasn't like this was 2 weeks before the fight.
Yeah, he wasn't getting off the sofa. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I still think Davis I still think he's a big threat at 135. He's still a big moneymaker at 135. I don't think he's going to fight in California anytime soon again. I think any California fans, especially in the LA area, if you went to that fight, I hope you enjoyed it, because you probably won't see him in California for quite a few years, especially after a decision like that, even though he got the win and we believe obviously he deserved it. He's not going to come back to California for a while. But let's just see. Yeah, let's just see how like I said, 135 is a toss up right now. You know, the whole floor is open. I know Kambosos has all the titles pretty much. Devin Haney has a title, but now you got Isaac Cruz, Isak Cruz going in there and throwing his name into the mix. So it's like, so you got George Kambosos Jr. and Isak Cruz, who a month ago people weren't talking about in terms of, oh yeah, they're not going to, you know, we were talking about Ryan Garcia, Teofimo Lopez, Lomachenko to an extent, Tank Davis, Devin Haney, you know, that round robin. And now you got Cruz and Kambosos Jr. in the mix. You know, Kambosos Jr. obviously won. Cruz didn't, but like I maintained earlier, Cruz came out a winner and his stock went way up. So hopefully he doesn't fall in that limbo where people look at him as high risk, low reward, and they don't want to fight him. Because it's possible they could look at him like that, you know? But we'll see. We'll see. But it was an entertaining weekend of fights. Davis, people shouldn't hold their breath for a rematch, but Davis isn't gonna rematch him. But Cruz is definitely going to be rewarded and get some pretty decent names, hopefully, going forward. And then real quickly, we'll touch on Mayweather. A lot of attention was put on that Mayweather was talking about Canelo in the post-fight, and that he brought him up. People are like criticizing that and saying like, "Oh, why are you bringing him up?" And but he brought Canelo up like on his own. Nobody even asked him a question about Canelo. I mean, whatever, man. You know, it gets like, look at all the stories being written. They're writing. All the attention and the stories being written are about Mayweather and how he called out Canelo, or not called out Canelo, but how he's talking about Canelo. Like, oh yeah, I cooked that thing. That's what he said. I cooked him when I was almost 40 years old or something like that, you know? And people are talking about it. And then when they're talking about it, they attach Tank Davis's name to those articles or to those videos, or people see, oh, where was he at? Or where was Mayweather when he said that? Oh, Tank Davis. Oh, he was at a Gervonta Davis fight. Oh, I've heard of that kid. Or who's this kid? That's this fighter. And they go. So I guess from a publicity standpoint, what do you think? Do you think it works? Like that he talks, you know, about Canelo like that and gets attention?
Yeah, Floyd knows what he's doing. You know, he'll always pop up and talk, you know, during the big fight weeks. And yeah, for PR-wise, Floyd's excellent. You know,
yeah, he knows.
He knows that, like, you know, because of the persona and the image he built up, it doesn't matter whether they like you, they hate you, as long as they're talking about you and as long as they're wanting to see your fights. He understands that. And I think that's why, you know, he'll bring up Canelo. And like you said, like, how many articles have we read this week about Floyd, and he's been retired for how long?
Right. Exactly. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But like I said, good Saturday and Sunday here in the States of some of the bigger names or the best fighters in the lightweight division, with some big surprises like Cruz, who now makes a name for himself in the 135-pound division. So I'm excited to see him. I know he's like on the smaller end of the lightweight division, but he went up against arguably the best knockout artist in that division. And he went 12 rounds with him, and he almost beat him. To some people, they thought he won. We don't think so, but he brought a fight to him. So it's like, okay, well, I don't think you can really take into account his stature or his size anymore, because he's already shown, I'll fight a bigger guy. I'll fight the biggest puncher, and I'll bring the fight. So we will see. Also on the card, really quickly, Carlos Adames gets the majority decision win in a hard-fought battle against Sergey Derevyanchenko. Derevyanchenko always, he's kind of like Sean Porter. Every fight he's in with any of these fighters, any of these opponents, he makes you work for it. He's a hard fight, right?
Yeah, I mean, this surprised me. Have we seen just Derevyanchenko get old overnight? Has he been in too many of those big fights, and now he's become a veteran fighter, and maybe his best days are behind him. I think he said afterwards he's going to take a break and come back. But yeah, definitely a very good performance from Adames. I didn't really see this coming. But, onwards and upwards for him, 21 victories, 16 KOs, good fighter to watch. Definitely a better performance than when he fought Teixeira, where Teixeira was just too much, threw too many punches and outworked him. This is definitely a better performance for him. Sad to see. I did like Derevyanchenko. He's always good to watch.
Yeah, I think he's 30. He's 36.
Yeah.
So, and he's been in there with some pretty excellent, fighters at 160 pounds. So maybe it's just father time catching up to him physically and from an age perspective. But, he's still a tough out as of right now. He's still a tough out. So we'll see how it goes as it moves forward. And Adames, I'm sure he's going to get a pretty decent fight lined up next year, sometime next year. I think after a win like that, he might get it. Maybe a Charlo. They're both PBC. Who knows? But there's been reports that Charlo might move up to 168, so I'm not sure. We'll see how that goes. But moving on, fight previews this upcoming Saturday, the 11th of December, from the country of Russia. The WBA light heavyweight champion Dmitry Bivol, 18-0, goes up against Umar Salamov, 26-1 on DAZN. What do you think about this matchup?
Stylistically, a good matchup for Bivol. Umar Salamov, comes to fight, and so I think we'll see a good performance from Bivol, who, at times likes to sit back and, counterpunch and kind of work off what the other guy's doing. So I think in terms of matchups, it's a good matchup for him. And I think Bivol really needs some standout performances now. He's had too many, lackluster performances, and the fact that he's good doesn't bring much to the table. I think that's why, so far in his, 18 fights, he's been hard to match up against the bigger guys.
Oh yeah, I agree. And I think if Bivol wins this upcoming weekend, Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez for Golden Boy is also fighting this month, I believe. And there's been rumors that DAZN wants to match up both of them. Ramirez is obviously newly signed to Golden Boy Promotions. Bivol, I think, is with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. But they both fight on DAZN as of this moment. And I think that's what they're going for. I think DAZN realizes that, like, hey, okay, let's have them fight in the same month. And then if they both win, we'll match them up next year. So I think I'm fairly certain to say that if Bivol wins this weekend and if Ramirez wins later this month when he has his fight, I'm fairly certain that we're going to see that matchup next on DAZN. What do you think?
I could see that. It makes sense, when you kind of get used to the boxing sphere and the different promotions, and when people are on the same promotion and same TV network, it just makes sense at times to match those guys up, even though there's, bigger and better fights elsewhere. Nobody ever really wants to share their toys. So unfortunately, when you're in the same, you're in the same playpen, you just have to share what you've got in there because, people on the other side of the street want to keep theirs. Unfortunately, that's just the boxing world.
It is, unfortunately. Also, this upcoming weekend from Dubai, the Coca-Cola Arena, John Riel Casimero, 31-4, goes up against Paul Butler. This is for the WBO bantamweight world title. This is a Pro Bellum show. We were talking about this just before we came on air, that we're not sure who the broadcaster is for this fight. We're not sure if this fight is even going to be broadcasted. Because we've looked on the posters that they have been utilizing to advertise this event. It doesn't show, right? It doesn't show any broadcast partner.
Yeah, it doesn't show anything for us over here.
Maybe it's a Fight TV thing.
That's what I was wondering, whether it's going to be a Fight TV in the US, because when you go online, there's nothing. So I'm not too sure for our US listeners where we're going to be able to find this.
Yeah, well, we'll try to dig, and if we do, we'll obviously tweet it out. But what do you think about this matchup, Casimero and Butler for the WBO Bantamweight World Championship?
It should be a good matchup for Casimero. Paul Butler's obviously, kind of over the hill. His last few fights have been against, guys that have had more losses than wins. But he's still a name, ex-world champion. we're still waiting for the big fight, between Casemiro and Inoue. Obviously, that was supposed to happen April 2020 when COVID came. It was actually supposed to be in Las Vegas, and I actually had my hotel and everything booked for that.
Right.
It got called off. So hopefully, sooner rather than later, both of them keep winning, and we get to see that great matchup. But how many Filipino fighters are on this card? You've got Joro Casemiro, Jason Mama, Donny Nietes. It's going to be a good Asian audience for Probellum.
No, yeah, I'm sure that's what they're banking on. They probably have a broadcast partner in the Philippines. I would think they do. I mean, that'd be the smart move financially. But also moving on that card, Sonny Edwards, 16-0, like you mentioned, goes up against Jason Mama for the IBF flyweight title. What do you think about this matchup, Edwards versus Mama?
I like Sonny Edwards, even though he doesn't really knock people out. Just his style of fighting from the outside, he makes it flashy, he makes it fun to watch, which at times is hard, when you're not knocking people out, because that's generally why people tune in, to watch a gladiator fight to the death, kind of. Rearranged fight after Sonny Edwards got injured a couple of months ago. Stylistically, I think good matchup for Sonny. I think we all want to see Sonny win this and then hopefully fight Julio Cesar Martinez, obviously because Martinez fought his brother, Charlie Edwards. But the referee in that fight, he hit him when he was down. Mauricio Suleiman stepped in, called the fight off. And obviously, Charlie Edwards managed to keep his title, but then he gave it up, saying that he struggled to make weight for that fight. And, Cesar Martinez was kind of kicking his butt, to be honest with you, until he was DQ'd. So there's kind of some history behind that. So I think, everybody would like to see Edwards win and then go on to fight Martinez. Yeah,
I'm sure Eddie Hearn and DAZN would like that matchup on the DAZN platform. And rounding off that card, Donny Nietes, as you mentioned earlier, 43-1-5, goes up against Norberto Jimenez, 39-5. What do you think about this matchup?
Good fight of some of the elder statesmen of the boxing world, shall we say. You mean Donny Nietes has been around forever. He's nearly knocking on 50 fights now. And it's good to see him back in the ring. Hopefully he can pick up the win on the night. And it's a very, Filipino dominated card. So it'd be good to see, a couple of them win just for in terms of audience.
Absolutely. And also this weekend from the Echo Arena in Liverpool on DAZN, Conor Benn, 19-0, goes up against Chris Algieri for the WBA Continental Welterweight title. What do you think about this matchup?
Good fight, actually. I'm honestly kind of a little bit, I'm a little bit stuck on this because Conor Benn is obviously good, limited at times. He kind of just walks his, fighters down and gets kind of wins because he's generally like bigger, stronger, fitter than a lot of his opponents. He is coming along in terms of, his boxing skills and boxing IQ. Algieri's good though. He really is in terms of he has a good boxing IQ because he's not the biggest and he's not the strongest because he's kind of thin, isn't he? He's very thin for that division. He's not.
Well, look at the win of his career against Provodnikov.
Yeah,
that was a win of his career, and he outboxed him and he won the fight.
Yeah, if we could, the problem is when you get to this stage, you don't know what Algieri's got left. Is Algieri just coming in for a payday? Is Algieri taking it as seriously as he used to? These are the things we don't know as fans. We don't know how good the camps are. We just go off their previous performances. I mean, they've obviously picked this, for Ben. Algieri's an old name, kind of coming down the other side of the hill.
He's fought Pacquiao.
Yeah, exactly. So they're, banking on him to win. Am I going to go for a shock here? I've picked a few lately, haven't I? And I got them right.
Do you really think this is a close matchup? I don't think it is. I think Ben beats him.
What, convincingly?
Yes.
I think it's... See, I just struggle because of when he fought... Who did he fight? Granados. He couldn't catch him. And if Algieri saw that and thinks, you know what? I've realised that he can't cut the ring off. And Granados just ran. Fight was boring. Everyone said it was boring. Because it was a very strange performance from Granados. If Algieri just does that, kind of like the Provoking, similar performance on the outside, jab, 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 don't let him set, keep him twisting, keep him turning, Conor will be lost. Conor will be very, very lost. But like I said, we just don't know. Is Algieri just in here for the last few paydays? Or is he in there going, you know what? I can beat Conor Benn. I might be able to get one more shot. If I beat Conor Benn, I might get one more big payday. I may get a look at a world title against somebody. I'm going to go... I'm going to go 12-round decision. I'm going to have to go. I'm going to have to go for it. I'm going to go 12-round decision, Algieri.
Really? No way.
I can't say all that, can I? And then go 12-round decision, Conor Benn. So I'm going to go 12-round decision, Algieri. If he stays on the outside.
In the UK? In the UK?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. See, I don't see that happening in the UK. I just don't.
But at the same time, Conor Benn could go in there, catch him and blow him out. It's just because you don't know what's left. That's the problem when you're picking fights. Because you look at their old performances and I don't know, is Algieri even training that hard for it? Because he does a lot of TV work. Like Sean Porter. Sean Porter was doing podcasts, does TV work. His dad wasn't happy. He fights Crawford, starts okay, starts to lose. His dad pulls him out. You know, we don't know what goes on behind the closed doors. So we only just go off like previous performances and, you know, try to judge it with age and stuff like that, how they look physically. You know, Algieri's always in shape. And on his day, you could do it. Keep him twisting, keep him turning. Don't let him get his feet set because Conor Benn is, you know, he's a power puncher, isn't he? He likes to get in there and just really brawl, fight more than box. So if I was Algieri, that's what I would do with, you know, his previous performances and how he did against, what was he called him again?
Provodnikov.
I can't say him against him. He needs that similar performance.
So you're going to Algieri decision. I'm going Benn knockout.
That's probably what it would be. It'd either be a decision one way or a knockout the other way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. I think. Yeah, I don't think it's as close as you think it is, but you could be right. You could. I mean, obviously, I was wrong twice in last week. You know, for this weekend. So, was it?
That'd be a shock, though, wouldn't it?
Once or twice, or whatever. But yeah, I'd be shocked if Algieri wins the fight, especially in the UK, a decision. But we'll see. Also on the card, Katie Taylor, 19-0, returns and goes up against Firuza Sharapova. This is for the WBC, WBA, IBF, and WBO. Undisputed lightweight world titles. What do you think about this matchup?
Sharapova's not really a name you hear too much in the, you know, the women's boxing scene. And based on the lack of talent in there and the fact that we've never really heard of her, Katie Taylor should smoke her, in all honesty, for being completely honest with it. You know, like all the names in and around all of the divisions you hear. Amanda Serrano, Clarissa Shields, Michaela Mayer, and Sharapova's never really been one. The only Sharapova I know is the tennis player. Yeah. So Katie Taylor really should go in there and, you know, deal with her. I feel for Katie Taylor because she's kind of running out of opponents now of any note. Yeah. You know, they're talking about her coming around and fighting, you know, Jessica McCaskill again. She's already fought her.
Well, I mean, McCaskill now has a bigger name with all the belts. Why not?
I mean, the one that we've all been waiting for and the one that could be the victory that sends her into retirement because she's pretty much done everything is get her the Serrano fight.
I think they will eventually fight. There's no way that they're not. They have to. It's not like there's a lot of options.
How long have they been positioning it though, Danny? Like what, 2-3 years? Back and forth.
Yeah, but I still think they can still do it. You know, Jake Paul promotes Amanda Serrano now, which is actually excellent for her career. And you don't think he's going to try to do that? I mean,
is that alongside Lou DiBella or did they?
You know what? I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure. I don't know if he's still involved or not. I mean, he could be, but I mean, Jake Paul, having somebody with the reach that he has, that's excellent for her career. That's excellent. So, yeah, I think they're going to fight. They might fight next year. I could see it happening. If they keep taking their time and more years pass by and they haven't fought Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, then it's like, okay, what the hell's going on? But there's not that many options. You're going to have to fight, and you're probably going to have to fight sometime next year. So we'll see. Also this weekend from the Dignity Health Sports Park, formerly the Home Depot Center, formerly the StubHub Center in Carson, California, on Showtime, Nonito Donaire, 41-6, goes up against Raymart Gaballo for the WBC Bantamweight World Title. What do you think about this matchup?
I think we spoke about this a while back. Should have put him in there with Inouye. Do the rematch because
But
Especially
Inoue's top rank was never going to let that happen.
But I remember we talked about this before. And like, especially during COVID and this year, the amount of upsets we've seen, sticking people in with somebody else for another payday to set up another fight at times doesn't work. What happens if Donaire goes in there? How many times can Donaire go to the well and pull out these performances against the younger guys? You know, I'm sure they've done this, said like, you know what, stick him in there with Gabayo, then we'll face, you know, Casemiro or Inoue. What happens if Gabayo upsets him? How many times have we seen that this year?
Right.
It's less likely to happen to Inoue because he's, you know, still in his prime. He may even get even better. You know, he's still young. But for someone like Donaire, he could get old overnight, and then he doesn't get that payday against Inoue. And neither does his managers, neither does his promoters. So there's no better time than now, especially when, what is Donaire? He must be 38?
I think 38, something.
Yeah.
Like that.
So I don't know. I mean, I think he should win. But you know, that performance against Inoue, that might have been the last one.
Right.
You know, that might be the last time we see that old school Donaire. You know, maybe all these training camps and all these years and what's he on 47 fights. He could get old overnight, and then we don't get the rematch.
Or maybe he has not an identical blueprint, but something similar to the Mayweather blueprint, where when Mayweather was getting older and older and older, he was still just as good as he was before. So you never know. I mean, Nonito Donaire's obviously had multiple losses, but maybe he has water out of that well. You know,
and he lives. It seems like he lives the life, like Floyd. They both live the life.
Right. So we'll see. I think Donaire knows that Inoue fight, he gave him a good fight, even though he lost, and he probably thinks, okay, that'll be my one last payday, and maybe I can beat him because I gave him a good fight the first time. So maybe that's his motivation. So
imagine doing that in like a New Year's Eve in China or somewhere like that, Japan. Like you can probably get 150,000 open.
With those two, Donaire and Inoue, big time. Big time. Also this weekend, lightweights again. Vasil High-Tech Lomachenko goes up against Richard Comey from the Madison Square Garden. Is this the theater or the actual arena? It's part of the theater, right?
I think it's
from the theater at Madison Square Garden, the Hulu Theater, I think it's called, in New York City on ESPN and ESPN Plus. I mean, I think this is a decent matchup. Comey's obviously a decent name, but I think Lomachenko still beats him. You know, I know Lopez knocked him out fairly quickly. But in that fight, when Lopez knocked him out, it was like they were both engaging with each other and he caught him. It wasn't like he kind of set it up. He still knocked him out, but I think Lomachenko is going to win a lot more convincingly. Assuming he still has some gas left in the tank, which he should. I don't see why not. I think Lomachenko is going to take it this weekend. And Lomachenko is going to be back in the mix at 135 pounds. And as I mentioned earlier, depending on the performance this weekend, which I think is going to be another typical Lomachenko performance, I think Lomachenko is still the best lightweight at 135 pounds when you look at the landscape. I really do.
No, I agree with pretty much everything you said there. Lomachenko is 33 years old. And I like the fact that even after everything he's done, he still has that little bit of spite about him. And when you see him ever since he lost to Teofimo Lopez, he looked kind of pissed. And you could see him when he came back and fought, was it Nakatani? It was kind of like, I'll show you guys. All you guys that have doubted me, I'll show you how good I am. And I think it's going to be the same when he gets Comey. I think until he gets back and manages to win like 1, 2, 3, or even maybe collect all the world titles again at lightweight, I think he's kind of like, you know what, you guys counted me out. I'm going to show you how good I am, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to collect all the belts again, and then I'm just going to retire. And I think that's what we'll see. I think he had the time off to fix his shoulder. Whatever else was wrong with him, you know, physically or mentally, I think he's managed to fix that, and I think he'll school Comey. I think Comey's a little bit limited. He's kind of like big, he's strong, he's a 1-2 merchant. He's not that skillful. He's a little bit flat-footed as well. And perfect in terms of stylistic feat for somebody that's, you know, as fleet as foot, They'll just keep him twisted and turning. He'll pop up on one side of him. He'll punch him, turn around. He's going to be behind him. Lomachenko with all the stuff that he normally does. I think he'll have Commey running in circles. And it's strange to look at. Nobody talks about him anymore. Ever since he lost to Teofimo, he's just disappeared off the face of the planet. Where he was 12, 13-0 with all the guys who were quitting, and they were all world champions that he fought. He literally, some of the people he fought, we never even saw again.
Right.
Nicholas Walters disappeared off the planet.
Exactly. He never returned after that. I never disregarded Lomachenko. I gave Lopez the credit, but Lomachenko, I always knew was going to be back, assuming he didn't retire, which I never thought he was. But it was just, I based that off of the fight with Lopez. I always felt that Lopez had a lot more scoring shots to win the fight. But when Lomachenko really turned it on and went after Lopez, you can tell that his shots did a lot more damage, and Lopez looked a lot more intimidated by Lomachenko's shots. So, yeah, I don't think it's right to disregard Lomachenko. I think he's still very, very much in the mix in that division. And like I said, I still think he's the top dog, especially if he puts on like an excellent performance this weekend, like the old Lomachenko, if that's how we want to say it. I still think he's the best fighter at 135 pounds. I still do.
I'm a big fan of him. I love his style. I love the fact that he's professional. He just gets in there, does the job, and same as his dad, there's no, he's not there talking about money and drinking and women. He's just like uber professional, and it's all about, legacy, and fighting the best. And because, look at it. You've got Rigondeaux, Mariaga, who was good at the time, Jason Sosa, Nicholas Walters, Roman Martinez, Gary Russell. He's still the only person to beat Gary Russell.
Jorge Linares.
Yeah, Anthony Crawler, Luke Campbell, Pedraza. It's just he's fought some excellent fights. In 17 fights, he's fought all these guys. And some of those guys, you've got to remember as well, some of the guys that people will remember now, but at the time, they were on top of the world. And that's why he was fighting them. And then he beat them. And after that's when the careers kind of dropped off. Especially like we talked about. Nicholas Walters was like known as, somebody who was just getting in there, like the Dark Destroyer at the time. And Lomachenko made him look average.
Right. Yeah. We'll see. But all these lightweights are fighting all within 3-4 weeks of each other, which is excellent. So now they hypothetically, you can match them up in their next fight because they're kind of all on the same schedule. So that's a hopeful statement. We'll see if that even happens, but we're not sure. The news and notes of this week's episode of The Last Round. After several years and shenanigans, Dillian Whyt, the WBC, finally orders the World Championship bout between Dillian Whyt and Tyson Fury. Essentially, Dillian Whyt gets his title shot, which has been the issue for several years. I don't know how he's kind of been stuck in limbo, and I don't know, maybe the WBC just didn't, I know Fury and Wilder were kind of stuck together, and then, that kind of threw wrenches into the whole plan, but he finally gets it. What was your reaction when you heard the news?
At last, it's one of those where you just like, at last, because you could see the WBC like kind of saying, you know what, we're still in litigation with Dillian Whyt, so at this minute we're going to call another fight. And Dillian Whyt had to wait even longer, but luckily they did the right thing, and hopefully we'll see those two fight. I mean, it's going to be huge in the UK. That Dillian Whyt's obviously got a big legion of fans. He's done how many pay-per-views? Tyson Fury obviously the same, and obviously it'll be the first fight back for quite some time for Tyson Fury on British soil, which will be interesting because obviously he had that back and forth with the British Board of Boxing about his supposed ban when he tested positive, and he disappeared for 2 years. And
can he fight there now? Is he cleared?
He doesn't have a license to fight there. I mean, he kept saying that the US was his home, but I'm sure when he applies for a license that they'll jump at the chance. And
do you think do you think if for some, I mean, I'm sure he'll get a license, but do you think if for some reason he does not get a license, or he says like, I don't need a license over there, I fight in the US now, do you think they stage this fight in New York?
And if Tyson decides to really go that length and stick to his guns, as they say, and say like, no, I'm not fighting there after what you guys did to me. Then maybe, but I mean, I'm sure, at the same time, he probably wants his dad to see him, right? His dad obviously can't come to the US due to his, convictions.
Right.
So, Big John can probably, will be at the fight, obviously, if it's staged in the UK. The build-up would be amazing, though.
Yeah,
Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyt, the build-up will be amazing for that fight.
Press conference is going to be crazy.
Oh, man.
The kickoff one. Keith Idek, friend of the show from Boxing Scene, has reported that it could possibly take place in March in either Cardiff or Manchester. So we'll see how that unfolds as the months go forward. And also, Tommy Fury has withdrew from his fight against a YouTuber, Jake Paul. Tyron Woodley steps in a rematch against Jake Paul on December 18th. I'm sure that's going to affect their UK crowd. I don't think a lot of UK fans are going to tune in now because, like you said, there wasn't Tommy Fury like on some dating show or something.
Yeah, like a reality TV show, Love Island. Right.
So I'm sure the UK audience is definitely going to be drastically reduced because of this. But we'll see. We'll see. Like I said, like we've been talking about the last 3 years or so, these social media fights and YouTubers are here to stay. And I mean, Jake Paul's, it's not that he's not fighting. I mean, it looks like he has been improving regardless. So, and I mean, would you say that if Tommy Fury didn't get injured, would you label that Tommy Fury was the best fighter that Jake Paul would have fought so far? I mean, I think so, no?
Probably, yeah. I mean, he's the most natural boxer. I mean, obviously, Tyron Woodley, was great in MMA, world champion for, a long time, but, his boxing ability wasn't up to scratch in terms of, when he fought Jake Paul. The fight was kind of close, actually, and, the rematch will be interesting. But, yeah, Tommy had more of just a generalized boxing background where, Tyron Woodley was more of a, mixed martial arts. I mean, Tommy supposedly pulled out and posted some things saying that he had like broken ribs, and he actually just wants to reschedule it for later in 2022. So we'll see if that's going to happen.
Yeah, we'll see. Whatever, it is what it is. I mean, this is more of like a novelty fight for them to each get paydays, but it is what it is. We have a pretty good the month of November, December. We've had some, and we still have some pretty good upcoming fights. So a good, strong way to end the year in the sport of boxing. So before we completely sign off for this week's episode of The Last Round, go ahead and let our followers and listeners know where they can find us and follow us.
We're at The Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter, and be sure to join us next week. We'll be obviously reviewing all the fights we spoke about today and previewing Artur Beterbiev against Marcus Brown, Joseph Parker against Derek Chisora.
So once again, from my co-host Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round Podcast.